And I'll join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thank you for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? Those of you here the first time, what brings you here?
Him.
Him. What did him say to get you here?
Well, I come, my in-laws were Buddhist, and I'm supposed to didn't do it legally.
Yeah, nice. Well,
And
glad.
he told me he came, so I came over.
Yeah, well, glad you're here. Welcome. Yeah.
I mistakenly thought there was a 12-step Zen today, but it's tomorrow. So,
Well-
but this is a joy to be here.
Yes, this is hopefully a pleasant mistake. We'll ask you after. I don't want to assume that you're going to enjoy the next hour. So, and to be clear, I think you're potentially combining two. So there is a 12-step Zen on Saturdays at 10 a.m. only virtual. Then Sunday morning at 10, I think pizza's at 10 a.m. And then Sunday morning here, there's also a recovery, Buddhist recovery group, 10 a.m. So both are happening. But either way, you're here. So welcome. Yeah.
Hi, so I will join virtually.
Yeah,
In person.
nice. Well, how do you find it virtually?
I found this place online, and then I went to the webpage and looked at the social media and everything.
Yeah,
And so I saw that it was virtually.
yeah,
Join virtually. So that's what I was doing.
yeah. No, great answer. But what I meant was like, how is it virtual? Like sitting virtually. You enjoy it?
I do.
Yeah, nice. Good. Well, glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. Anyone else first time? Yeah, what brings you here?
Curiosity.
About?
It's a long topic we're gonna get on about everything.
Sum it up. 10 seconds.
Okay. About life, about why we're here, our purpose, the great beyond, our spiritual calling, how everything's connected, everything is one, there's truth everywhere, and just trying to find it.
Yeah. Man, you're thinking a lot. Yeah, I'm glad I said 10 seconds. Well, we're glad you're here. I hope to accomplish all of that in the next hour as well. Your ultimate purpose, ultimate truth, why we're here, the beyond, all that, man.
I won't hold you to it.
I thank you. I appreciate it. No pressure. And you're how old?
31.
31. Oh, you look young. I was going to say like 24.
Thank
So, yeah, 31. You're getting old. All right. So let's start with a meditation practice. For those who are joining virtually, thank you for showing up. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello as you are. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. I mean, you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight. If you need to move, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. It just means you need to move. And if you are brand new or sitting for the first time, it's important to understand you're not going to think nothing. Your mind will not shut off. It's not going to go blank. You'll continue to have racing thoughts. I'll say things periodically to remind you that you're lost in thought, bring you back to the present moment, or to wake you up because you've fallen asleep. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from your practice. Just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. Realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives, but with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment, as we all know, is filled with conflict, chaos, difficulties, challenges. And so this practice is learning to be with life as it arises, not running from anything. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in every moment. And that's it. To me, Buddhist practice is very simple. It's not complicated. Becoming aware of thoughts, words, and actions. This is our karma. The word karma literally means action. It's not what goes around comes around. It's not getting what you deserve. It's what we bring into the world. And what we bring into the world with our thoughts and our words and our actions is the foundation of this practice. And that never changes. People often want to complicate it, and it seems complicated because it's 2,500 years old, and there's lots of countries and cultures and languages and words and terms, and welcome to America in 2025, and you got lots of New Age philosophies and all kinds of stuff. This practice is so simple. Think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. Do our actions benefit self and others, or do they harm self and others? That's it. Nothing to answer, nothing to solve, nothing to figure out. Just moment to moment awareness of our own actions. And that just repeats. And in some ways, that's why it's so difficult. And in some ways, that's why it's so easy. There isn't any more to it. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I always really prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning for questions. And again, to those joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. Feel free, if you have any questions, put them on the chat box, and I'll do my best to respond. So we'll open up to questions.
Can we talk about the word expect? Just before you walked in, I said to two people, I'm going to be using the word expect a lot. I expect to have a good day. I expect it to go right. And then at the end of meditation, you say, let go of all expectations. And I don't know.
Yeah.
And is it just a matter of semantics, or is it two different ways of looking at it?
Are you expecting an answer right now? And if you don't get an answer, how will you feel? If you don't get an answer, how would you feel?
About the same as normal.
Okay, well, that's
I
good.
mean, I don't feel loving.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think to me, and yes, well, I'll say this first. I think expect from a practice standpoint, within Buddhist practice is really dangerous. That's the first word that comes to mind. I think expectations are dangerous. And
You know, it helps you manifest something, like
I'm not trying to manifest anything.
intention.
I'm just trying to take care of my own stuff each moment. So let me back up a little bit. And you've heard me say this before, this idea around Venerable Isur, my first teacher, who I believe you would have met years ago at some point in time. But she taught me 22 years ago as a very basic practice Learn to expect nothing from anyone, ever. Well, I'm not saying this is easy. Hang on.
It's dismal.
What's that?
It's dismal.
No, it's not dismal. It's liberating. It's freeing. It's beautiful. Because here's the thing. Not expecting things doesn't mean people are going to stop doing things. People are going to do what they're going to do, regardless of what we expect from them. Your day is going to turn out however it's going to turn out you mentioned manifestation, and I'll tie this back very specific fundamental Buddhist teachings in a minute, but your day is going to play out today, regardless of what your expectation is of it. You mentioned manifestation, right? I'm not a believer in just sitting here and manifesting that if I think hard enough that a Ferrari is going to show up outside, that it's going to show up, right? I could sit here all day long and try to manifest that, and that Ferrari is never going to show up. I could have the intention of a Ferrari showing up, and all the intentions in the world are still not going to make that Ferrari show up. The only way that Ferrari is going to show up is if I do the things that would be required for that Ferrari to show up. That's never going to happen, right? Just using that example for anyone who doesn't know me and thinks I want a Ferrari. It's just popped into my head because that was my dream car when I was a kid, right? Now, this idea of manifesting, for me, Buddhist practice is not about manifesting. Buddhist practice is about intentions, very much so. And I see these two words, maybe from a semantic standpoint, as different. But this idea of intentions are my intentions each moment, my practice. And not pretending that I can do this, right? But my practice is to look at my intention each moment. And is my intention from body, speech, mind, thought, word, and action filled with generosity, compassion, and wisdom, which is the second noble truth of the Buddhist teachings, or is my intention in each moment filled with greed, anger, and ignorance? And every day, my entire day is filled with nothing but moment to moment to moment intentions. Now, whatever my intentions are, it does not mean that it's going to play out that way. I could intend for everyone to be loving and kind all day long. I could intend for myself to be loving and kind all day long. Does that mean it's going to happen? No. And how it occurs, how it plays out, it always comes back to how am I doing when things play out? And that's why I say it's dangerous, because if I expect to have a wonderful day, what if I don't have a wonderful day? Then I'm potentially disappointed. Then I potentially feel like I've failed. Then I potentially feel like I have lost. If I expect to have a terrible day, that to me is dismal, right? That to me would be miserable, expecting to have a terrible day. I expect nothing from today. And then whatever happens, happens. Some of it will be beautiful. Some of it will be terrible. But to me, it's just a day. And ultimately, all of that day is beautiful if I choose to have that perception of it. Even the pain, even the suffering, even the death, even the loss, even the trauma, even the disgusting, horrific things happening in the world are opportunities for all of us to cultivate a deeper sense of compassion and wisdom. But I don't expect anything from anyone. And I have found that the most freeing practice in my entire life. Because there is no disappointment. I'm just debating whether I want to say this or not, but I will say it. So if I was going to expect anything, then I would expect the day to go nothing like how I expect it to. I think that, to me, from a practice standpoint, from a non-attached Buddhist lens, that would be the most skillful, the most upaya means skillful means, the most skillful, to me, the wisest approach to today would be to expect it to go completely different from how I expect it to go. Therefore, to me, it's just easier to have no expectations. And I want to clarify for anybody who might be new, having no expectations does not mean you don't care. It does not mean it doesn't matter. Dropping expectations is not about nothing matters. Everything matters. Everything is important. That's why you come back to your intention. Thoughts, words, actions, loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. These practices are very important. This is what we bring into our day as a practice. But how that's received and how that's played out, that's out of my control. So Yeah. Is that the answer you're expecting?
I have no.
There you go. It's so easy. What else? Yeah.
I'm gonna butcher this.
Yeah, you're right.
So bear with me, but I've heard what you were saying, and it's something like expectations, like unreasonable or inflexible expectations lead to future resentments. And I've thought a lot about that because I personally and professionally have a lot of expectations as well, and learning to let go of those can be very difficult. One thing I noticed, I went on a trip last year. It was a pretty big trip and took a lot of planning and effort and time and money, all of that. And I had a lot of expectations about this is amazing, I wanted to do this forever. It didn't go very well, and I didn't have a very good time. And so it kind of was a double whammy because A, it wasn't that great of a trip, but then B, I was so disappointed because going in, I was like, oh, I expect this, and none of them happened. And so I'm disappointed it happened. And then I'm also saying, well, wait, I expected it to be this way. I expected that to happen. I expected this to happen. Where I think if I could have gone in with a little more like, okay, this is a big trip. We'll see how it goes. Some good, some bad. I probably would have handled it better. And I was very resentful when I got home. Like, great, I'm glad I did that. Like,
Yeah.
kind of what a waste.
Yeah.
And looking back, I had a little more perspective, but in the time, it didn't serve me well. Or, with people, I think, too, we have expectations we put on others, and I do it all the time. And if they disappoint you, or they don't meet that expectation, and it could be they half the time don't even know what the expectation is.
Sure.
And then we turn around and they confess their resentment, and then they don't know why we're resentful, but we expect them to know what our expectations are.
Right. We put that expectation on people, and which is completely unfair. And it doesn't mean we need to stay in unhealthy, toxic, dangerous relationships, right? Buddhist practice doesn't say, for those who are not familiar, it doesn't say stay in a dangerous situation, but to drop these expectations on people, that's a lot of pressure and weight to put on people. To your first part about, I think what triggered something I didn't say earlier also about your kind of example with the trip and things like that yes, you set these lofty expectations, but to me, the difference in practice is, to me, Buddhist practice is experiencing each moment as it arises versus comparing it to anything, especially to our like you had the expectation of a trip. But if you had if you just had no expectations, if you just went on a trip to experience being on a trip, then maybe you could have, and I'm kind of just re-saying, I think, what you said, maybe you could have just appreciated being on a trip. Because if you look back and just look at the moment-to-moment experience of what you did, it probably wasn't nearly as terrible as you played out. And it was probably pretty nice, but you had an idea, a goal of how you thought it would be. And so, yes, we then, we fail in the comparison. And so to bring that down to just day-to-day life, any of you have any expectations for yourselves that you've been trying to live up to your entire life and failed to meet? I mean, if you abandon those expectations that you have of yourself and everybody else, then you'd stop feeling like you're a failure or you're not good enough. Anyone here think they're not good enough? Or they haven't done this enough, or they haven't done that enough, or they haven't accomplished this, they haven't accomplished that. Like, there's so many, and these are not about removing goals or motivation. It's not about becoming just, it's not removing goals or motivation, but it's understanding, have goals, have motivation, but it's not about comparing. If we try to live up to these expectations we've had of ourselves our whole life, we're never going to get there. And then you're going to die feeling like you didn't live up to anything, as opposed to just experiencing your life. So to me, this practice is an experience, moment to moment. Yeah. You were going to ask a question.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, with our expectations, I was in transition, I had to, just things went wrong. And I was sitting there, I talked to the higher self, and it just said, hey, the day's not over. And then the phone rang, and it was someone I hadn't heard from in a while, and she wanted to work with me on something. bam, the day wasn't over.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, each moment is just opportunities. Life will change.
Yeah.
And this is the Buddhist teachings on impermanence, you know? Yeah.
As an artist, something that I'm curious about is where does the word or concept of creativity
Yeah.
land in this conversation? Because I think what works for me is constantly thinking like, what am I creating with the materials that are around me, whether that's emotions, thoughts, experiences, what's happening, and how to be in a creative state rather than a reactive state.
Sure.
So I'm just curious.
Yeah.
That's something I've learned a lot in my leadership practice as well, like how am I creating on a daily basis? What am I creating?
Yeah. No, the question for those of us who didn't hear was around, as an artist, creation. Where's the play with creativity kind of in this practice? I think the Buddha was an artist. I really do. I mean, I think his entire life was creating. Just because it was people, right? Versus, you know, maybe in my mind, I think of a canvas and paint or whatever your art form is. But I think his entire life was creating. You know, I remember it's trigger something, and not to make this about me, but I remember years ago, probably 15 years ago, there was a student who was doing a project, and they followed me to the prisons, you know, prison work I've been doing forever. And when I left, he said to me, that was like art. And it always stuck out to me because for me as a practice, I was creating a space. I didn't think about like, you know, the canvas and paint or whatever. So I think creativity it's important to understand, not just for you, but for anybody who's new, that, you know, this idea of non-attachment to outcomes and expectations doesn't get confused again with like just being emotionless. We're not emotionless. We have emotions. They come and go. We have happiness and sadness and joy and sorrow and anger and compassion. These emotions are always going to go. Always going to arise, always go. The practice is to understand the impermanence of them. And for me as a practice, how to utilize them. And a lot of that flows into creative outlets.
Well, I'm thinking too about like what Jerry said, like I expect to have a good day, and what if the reframe was like I'm committed to creating
Sure.
a great day regardless of what comes my way.
Yeah.
That's different. That's like you're putting your attention into that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's, you know, I don't want to, you know, I know I can tend to sound a little bit like harsh or extreme with things, and I'm not suggesting that we don't wake up with, I think it's healthy to have an intention that today's going to be a good day, right? I'm not suggesting anybody wakes up and say like, today's just going to suck, right? But actually, if you told yourself today was going to suck, then you can only go up from there, right? So that's not even a bad idea. But so I'm not suggesting that we abandon this intention of having a good day. I intend to have a good day. It's wonderful. But when we don't, when it doesn't, when whatever we're creating doesn't turn out how we wanted it to be created, are we okay with that? To me, that's really where the practice lies. As we're creating, as we're going through our day, as we care, are we okay knowing that some days are, you know, going to work out the way we want and some aren't? Yeah.
Is there a relationship between wisdom, knowledge, and spirituality in Buddhism? And if there is, what is that?
So the relationship between wisdom, knowledge, and spirituality in Buddhism.
Yeah, is there a relationship? And
Well, I'm sure there is. I think that's, again, really getting into one's definition of wisdom, one's definition of knowledge, and one's definition of spirituality. So let me start with wisdom. The Buddhist teachings are on the Four Noble Truths. The first thing he said is, I'm sure you know, life is filled with suffering. The second thing he says is the cause. The third is the ending of suffering, liberation, nirvana. The fourth is the Eightfold Path. And the second noble truth, the cause of suffering, greed, anger, ignorance, we overcome anger with wisdom. So specifically talking about wisdom for a minute, the two wings in Buddhism, they say, that make Buddhism fly is wisdom and compassion. So this practice of wisdom is incredibly important, but then the question is, well, what is wisdom, right? And so there's a story where the Buddha asked Subhuti, one of his wisest disciples, to give a discourse on ultimate wisdom. Subhuti sat down. You know what he said? Nothing. And when he was done, the Buddha patted him on the back, so to speak, and said, good job, good job. So wisdom was not about words. It was about experience of ultimate truth, which is reality. Not truth spoken by him or anybody, not truth spoken by any of us, but ultimate reality. Everything we see, everything we taste, everything we touch, everything we hear, everything, all of that is just our perceptions of reality. It's not ultimate reality. Make sense? Because ultimate reality would be, how could we all define the world? We would all talk about it differently. So to me, wisdom is understanding there's a true nature of reality that we can never touch. So in that regard, we're always lacking wisdom. But what's important, I think, to understand is if we lack wisdom, that means we really excel in a lot of ignorance, right? And that ignorance in Buddhist teachings is really our ego, our pride, where we're stuck. I mean, do you have certain views about things? Do you think you're right? Yeah. Do other people disagree with you? Yeah. But they're wrong. Of course. So there's our ignorance. It doesn't mean you need to abandon your views. Thich Nhat Hanh, he says nirvana liberation from suffering is freedom from views. Doesn't mean your views need to change or go away. Keep them, fight for them, believe in them, but understand that others have different views. So wisdom is somewhere going beyond our attachment to views. Knowledge, I think of knowledge as just an understanding. I think knowledge is like this intellectual understanding. I mean, even applied to Buddhism, right? How well do I understand? What is my knowledge of the practice of loving kindness and compassion and joy? And what is my knowledge of these basic teachings? There's the lineage just comes to mind in the Zen tradition of they call Zen patriarchs, starting with the first one was the Buddha, who held up a flower. It's called the flower sermon. And there was a disciple, Mahakashyapa, who saw the flower. No words were exchanged. And it was said at that moment that there was a mind-to-mind transmission between the Buddha and Mahakashyapa. So what we know as Zen, which is a Japanese word for Chan in Chinese, was not something that was spoken. It was an experience. Then the reason I bring this up is the sixth patriarch, Wei Neng, was illiterate, couldn't read, couldn't write, but was considered the wisest disciple to achieve this next lineage holder of the Zen tradition. So we look at knowledge and we think, well, does knowledge mean you have to read and write? So again, we're looking at breaking down. And then spirituality, I don't know, I always have a tough one of that because I think spirituality means so many things to so many people. Like, I've been doing this a long time. I don't consider myself a spiritual person. I just consider myself somebody who spent a lot of years treating people like crap and now tries to treat them nicely, including myself. Does that make me spiritual? I think we get wrapped up, I think, a lot in Western culture of like this kind of anti-religion. So I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. I mean, call it whatever you want. Again, this is obviously just Jeff's perspective of it. But I think we use spirituality in a way often to kind of counterbalance this frustration people may have with religion. I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Great, just be nice. So like Buddhist, it doesn't matter what you call it, I guess is my point. So I don't know, that's maybe a breakdown of how I see the three. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
Want to ask about right livelihood or
Yeah.
right work? So it's the anniversary of my father's passing. He was a combat medic in World War II. He never hurt anybody, but he patched people up who did, even committed atrocities, which he witnessed. So I've been thinking about him, thinking about this question. Is there any way that what he did could be interpreted as right work.
Sure. You mean simply because he was in the military?
No, simply because he was in the military, he didn't hurt anybody, but
Right.
people he patched up did.
Right. So my question is what, and then I'll respond, but I want to fully understand your question. Your question is around, is there any way, and I'll talk about right livelihood in a minute, but your question is there any way that what he did could have been considered right livelihood? And what I'm asking you is, what makes you think it wasn't, I guess is my question. Or is there something that makes you think that?
Because he indirectly helped people who did it.
Who then were harming?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand that. So just to back up, for those who don't know, the right livelihood, when you look at, and I mentioned it briefly, the Eightfold Path, the fourth step on the Buddhist teachings are correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. So this is your Eightfold Path. These are the 8 steps. Now, in the Buddhist teachings, going back to the time of the Buddha, there were very fundamental, concrete things he said. For example, don't run a brothel, right? Don't be a butcher. Don't run a gambling house, right? There are very specific things about livelihood that he listed as were not right livelihood. I look at all of the things with livelihood, kind of bringing it to a modern day today. The question is, what is the intention behind the action? Now, we can't control what others do, right? I'll share a story in a minute, just popped into my head, but your father, yeah, what was he doing? Break it down.
Well, he was a medic. People would be wounded and
So he was doing what?
helping people.
Helping people and saving
Life.
lives. Correct?
Yes.
End the story. Years ago, there's a program out at Point Loma Naval Base, started about, 12 years ago, for active military coming back from combat with PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And so I was doing meditation every week for like 5-6 years. And when I first started there, these guys were working on getting cleared through med boards to go back to combat. And so I'm there doing meditation with them. And when I first started with that population, and after one meditation, there was a guy, he was a sniper. And we were working on meditation. And he said, this is very similar to what we're taught before we pull a trigger. It's called BRASS. Breathe, relax, aim, squeeze, shoot, right? He said, you should have taught us this before we deployed. He said it would have helped. And after this conversation, I left that day and I was walking off the base and I realized I probably made this guy a better shooter. True story. And I called a good friend of mine who was the named psychiatrist who built the program, and I said that to him. And he said, how's it make you feel? Meaning like, are you okay with that? And I thought about it and I said, it's not my job to control what he does with what I teach him or what I share with him. He's a sniper at that moment, but his whole life is not going to be as a sniper. This individual had a wife, 3 kids, and wants to be able to walk through a grocery store without wanting to break somebody's neck. And this is no joke. I'm retelling the stories that he shared. And so on that quick walk back to my car, I came to terms with it real quickly. And for the last 12, 15 years, I've worked a lot with the military population. And Smitty, who's a Zen priest down at the Japanese Buddhist temple, she was a helicopter pilot, many combat tours. And she said to me when I first started doing this work, she said, Jeff, most people join the military, don't join the military because they want to kill people. They join the military because they want what? Peace.
He hated war and taught me to be a pacifist.
Yeah. So I think I learned a lot from that experience, and even tying it into Buddhist practice, that what our intention is in that moment is what's important. And in that moment, he's helping people who are suffering. This is not about, and again, it gets really tied into, we could very quickly go into judgment mode and say, well, that's what he did. So now he's suffering. He should suffer because he did that. This is not about that. This is not about justifying why people do what they do or why we do what we do. This is about recognizing that in that moment, your father is sitting there with people in his arms who are in tremendous pain and dying. And he's working on relieving their pain and suffering and keeping them alive. Sounds like some pretty beautiful work to me. Yeah. So, yeah. So the shame and guilt you still carry for your father's work, you are free from that. As we celebrate the heart site of your father's, yeah. All right. I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Pam during her time of suffering, and to Mark and his family who suffered this time. May they all be at peace and free from suffering. All right, a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every day we have different practices going on, different people leading from different Buddhist traditions. Every Thursday, 4:30, we do, I think, one of the best things around here. It's a food redistribution program. We prepare gourmet vegetarian meals, also known as peanut butter and jelly, and we feed people who sleep on the street. So anytime you think your life sucks and you kind of lack gratitude for everything you have in your life, feed people sleeping on the sidewalk, and it tends to put things in perspective. Out of the ordinary, a couple things coming up in case some of you came all prepared to dig some dirt outside today. If you missed the announcement that went out, we pushed that back a week. So next Saturday, we'll have a blessing ceremony. We'll have, this time here with Bhante Piyananda, Sri Lankan monk. It'll be really beautiful. We'll do a blessing outside in the garden as we prepare to start, hopefully soon, this work on the meditation garden. And then we'll do the ceremony. And then after that, we're going to stay for a few hours. So anybody who wants to just come dig some dirt, we're going to be here after this class next week from 12 to 3. You're welcome to stay for 20 minutes, for an hour, for 3 hours, and you're welcome to ignore it all and go home. It's totally up to you. But that whole area needs to be about 6 inches below concrete. So we're going to start digging that out next week. Other than that, also happy Pride Month. We have the Pride Parade coming up on July 19th. It's a Saturday, 10 a.m. So Dharma Bum Temple will again be marching in the Pride Parade. And then that Monday after the Pride Festival, we have sworn for the rest of our lives, as long as us and San Diego Pride exist, that we will show up Monday morning at Balboa Park to clean up the park, because after a 2-day wild, crazy, fun Pride Festival, the park gets a little bit dirty and people are a little bit tired. So one of the hardest, they get like 1,000 volunteers the whole weekend, and the hardest thing to have getting volunteers for is to clean up on Monday. So I have promised them 40 to 50 volunteers. Otherwise, really bad things happen to me. So please help me, unless you want bad things to happen to me, please help me get 40 to 50 volunteers. If you go to the website, there'll be a tab that says Pride Parade 2025. You can RSVP there. It'll take about 2 minutes for the parade and or the cleanup. So Buddha for you is downstairs. If you need anything, thank you all for being here. Good luck. Say again?
Do we bring our own shovels?
Yeah, if you have any sort of shovels, wheelbarrows, anything you have you want to bring them.